Welcome to Rges Algebra 1. This is lesson 2.2, adding signed numbers. Now we started talking about this last lesson, and we're going to continue on here a little bit. Now recall, if I am at 0, okay, on the number line, and I am adding two positive numbers. For instance, if I am adding a 3 and adding a 7. I'm going in the same direction, so I would have to sum those two values, and of course it would be positive. So if we have a positive plus a positive, we are going to sum the values, and the answer will be positive. And you know that because, of course, that's what you've always done since first starting to count. So we have let's say we have 11 plus 7. Okay, we sum the values, 11 and 7, and it would be positive 18. Now, what if we have negative and negative? We're going in that direction and then in that direction again. Notice we are still going in the same direction both times, so we are going to sum the values, but the answer will be negative. So this would be a negative plus a negative. So if I have negative 3 plus negative 5, I'm going to sum the values. By the values, I mean without signs. Just sum the values. 7 and 5 is 12, but the answer will be negative. If I have negative 3 plus negative 5, I'm summing the values themselves. 3 and 5 is 8, and the answer will be negative. And what I do in my mind is I just visualize the number line. They're both going in the same direction. I need to sum them. Now, what if I have a positive and a negative? Say I'm going in this direction and then I'm going in this direction. Notice I'm no longer summing them. They're not both going in the same direction. I actually have to take the difference of the values. In other words, a subtraction. And whether or not the answer is going to be positive or negative will depend on how much I have to go in each direction. Let me show you that over here to the right. So let's say I have a positive and a negative, and if I go a little in the positive direction and more in the negative direction, I am taking the difference between the two values, and my answer will be negative. Because the larger, I'm going more in the negative direction than I am in the positive direction. The other way we could look at it is if I have a positive and a negative and I go a lot in the positive direction and a little in the negative direction, then my answer will be positive. So either way, I'm taking the difference. But whether or not it's positive or negative will depend on which one I'm going the furthest. If I'm going the furthest direction in the positive, or the furthest amount in the positive direction, it will be positive. If I'm going the furthest amount in the negative direction, it will be negative. So what would that look like with values? Let's say I'm going to say positive 7 plus negative 3. I have a positive and a negative, but I'm going more in this direction, and this is positive. So I'll take the difference between 7 and 3, which is 4, but the answer will be positive. Let's say I'm going positive 3 plus negative 7. Now here, these are opposite signs, positive and a negative, so I know that I have to take the difference, taking the difference of the values without paying attention to the sign for the moment, the absolute value part. 7 and 3, the difference is 4. But now, because I went the furthest amount, or the largest amount in the negative direction, the answer will be negative. And so hopefully that's a very clear idea to you. Now another idea I want to talk about is this idea of subtraction. Subtraction is the opposite of addition. Another way I could say that is subtraction equals adding the inverse, the additive inverse. And I think we've discussed this a little bit already. But so let's say I have the idea of, let's say I have 7 minus 9. I can convert that to a 7 plus rather than a 9. I'm changing the operation to a positive, and I change the 9 to its additive inverse. Now recall that these are now different numbers. I have different signs. I have a positive in front of the 7 and a negative. So if they're different, I'm going to be going in the positive direction first and then the negative direction. So I need to take the difference between 7 and 9, which is 2. And now which direction did I go furthest in? I went furthest in this direction. This was 7, this was 9. So I'm going to end up with a negative 2. Okay. Now we're going to use that idea as subtraction is the addition of the additive inverse to interpret something like this. What does it mean to subtract a negative 9? Well, following the same concept above, I'm going to change my negative sign to a positive sign, and I'm going to change it to the original value to the additive inverse. The additive inverse of a negative 9 is a positive 9. These are both going in the same direction, and that will be, so I'll take the sum. That will be 16, and of course it will be positive. And of course, if you leave the sign off, that means positive. So, if I see something like 2 minus a negative 5, okay. Another way to say all of that is just reduce that to a positive. It's going to be a positive, right? So that would be 2 plus 5, or 7. Let's go ahead and look at our oral practice on page 49. Go ahead and put it on pause. Make sure you have your book. Okay, let's look at these oral practice problems on page 49. The first ones you notice, the first 5 are going to be absolute values. Remember, absolute value means the distance from 0 on the number line. So distance is never negative. We'll just change all the negative ones to their positive counterparts. A would be 3, B would be 4. It's already positive. C would be 7.2. I'm never changing the value, just the sign. D would be positive 2/3. E would be 0. That would be fine. Now in the next group, we have practicing the sign numbers. Notice we have 3 plus negative 5. This is for F. Opposite signs, so you're taking the difference. It would be 2. And because the 5 is greater than the 3, it would be negative 2. So F is negative 2. G, opposite signs, take the difference. 6, it would be positive 6. H, opposite signs, take the difference. 6 and 1, the difference is 5. It would be negative 5. Hopefully you're starting to think like this very quickly. I, same sign, take the sum. 3 and 4 is 7. They're both negative, so it's negative 7. J, opposite signs, take the difference. 1, it will be positive 1. K, same sign, take the sum. 9, it would be negative 9. A negative is a plus. This would be positive 4 for L. A negative negative would be a plus. This would be positive 6.1 for m. Absolute value, always positive. For n, it would be 5 1/3. A negative, okay, this one's a little trickier. Let's look at O more carefully. It says negative absolute value of -9. So I don't want to think negative negative here. I want to think, okay, this is positive. The absolute value of a negative is positive, and then you take the negative. So O is -9. Check that out. Make sure you understand that one. P, tell why it would be bad form to write 3 plus a -7. I don't consider it bad form, so I'm going to ignore that question. I could write that as 3 plus -7 or 3 plus -7 or 3 minus 7. They all three mean the same thing, so I'm not too concerned about. Tell whether the parentheses are needed in each case. My answer is that they are never needed. Okay, never needed is my answer. Okay, so he might look at that a little different in the way he likes to explain things, but when you are, as an algebra student, you should be able to start looking at that and consider that the very same as that. As if you have a plus and a minus sign together. Okay, this one's a little clearer perhaps when I add my negative sign in there, but it is representing the exact same idea. If I have -7 plus 4, of course I definitely don't need the parentheses there. This one, I would say, makes it a little clearer what you're doing. This one is certainly the same both ways. This one, I think he likes, again, if you have a plus and a negative together, that would make it a little clearer. So I would be happy with that one. When we have a positive before a parenthesis, that is definitely superfluous, so we never need that idea. U, it says -8. If I saw it this way, I would understand what they're telling me to do. Collapse that to a positive, just like that. But this would probably be the better form. Okay, the others, giving an example, I think you know all that. So make sure you just look at that yourself.